the finer points, let's, take a step back and go to the next phase and listen to our citizens and see what they have to say about our process. And we get great compliments, and we get complaints. I mean, that's normal, right?
Yeah. The thing that I hear repeatedly from business people is that, and Dave was mentioning, I mean, we need some checklists, cut lists, whatever you want to call it, a process that is streamlined and easy to understand, and we need to have a customer service type of focus in that we will shepherd people through the process and not tell them where to go and then stand in the road and keep them from getting there.
Well, I met with the developer a week or so ago, and obviously we're in the middle of a campaign and so forth, but at the end of the day, I'd like to take ownership from a consistency perspective. I think his biggest feedback, and I don't want to get into the who, but more the what, and the what for him was that there was just no consistency, whether we're talking about how we answer the phones or how we make decisions up here. I understand there's policies and ordinances that help dictate that, but at the end of the day, he just didn't see the consistency. And I think ownership is part of solving that problem, to understand how we portray our consistency, because that was the whole reason why he's just not interested in coming to Gardner to develop both residential and commercial, because he knows the consistency's not there.
And actually, Mary Birch spoke about that at the visioning session when she said that Overland Park was not the least expensive people to do business with, and they weren't the fastest people to do business with always, but they were consistent in their approach, and you knew what you were getting with them.
Mm-hmm.
And now, would I like to be faster and cost effective? Absolutely. But would I like for us to have some consistency in the way that we operate and discipline to make sure that we're adhering to visions and plans? Absolutely.
Well, you've got to own that.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. We'll look forward to the next step.
Yes.
Okay, our final element is the proposed appointment process for boards and commissions. You'll recall that we kind of stepped back and put some appointments on hold and had the discussion, and this is where we have arrived, at least at this point, in draft form.
That's correct. Mayor and Council, first of all, I'd like to take a moment to thank our City Clerk, Doreen, for all of her hard work in her research and putting together and assisting in this document. She's done a phenomenal job, so thank you, Doreen. This appointment process is brought to you. Right now, the City of Gardner utilizes our direct citizen input through the voluntary appointment process of individuals to various boards and commissions. We're specifically talking about the Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Electric Utility Board, and our Airport Board. At the Council's request and direction, by taking into consideration Council's desire to create a transparent appointment process, staff has explored best practices for recruiting candidates to serve on our boards and commissions. Staff recommends a mixture of best practices used by Johnson County government, the cities of Olathe, Lenexa, and Shawnee, as well as our own city municipal code. This draft appointment process, which recognizes the value of diversity within our city, provides an opportunity for appointment of new members who might bring a fresh perspective and energy to the body. It will also engage citizens in a manner which is most efficient and beneficial for the city, while also providing a positive experience for the members of the public that participate in the process. I think that's one of the things we were just talking about, again, is that service to our constituents. Staff is recommending a formalized process, which is outlined in the attached documents. The process includes the implementation of two options in which interested citizens can apply for appointed positions. The first option offers a printable public service application that can be accessed through the city's website. can be completed, filled out by hand, returned to the city clerk's office, and they can do that either via mail, walk it in, or by fax. The second option would be the ability to submit that public service application electronically, and that's an online application process, and that's very similar to what we put together for our human resource applications that we use in recruiting. So it would look very similar to that if you're familiar with that site. Attached are draft documents that are being presented to you to initiate dialogue on the topic, and I'm willing to go through each of these paragraphs, or if council has read through them and would like to just begin discussion, I'm happy to do either, whichever you would prefer.
I've
Ready
read through
for
'em,
discussion, yeah.
so-
Ditto.
Okay.
My first question was, the one thing I wasn't clear about, well, actually, I think I am, but it doesn't talk about anything about appointments within the city council. And it seems like these rules would apply in the same circumstance, so I'm wondering why that's been, as a separate piece, it appears.
Yeah, and actually, my understanding, Doreen can correct me, but that you all had asked that we do that separately from this process. So this was for all of our other boards, and we would come back to look at our council process at a later time.
Okay,
Hmm?
okay.
The one question I had, first of all, I think this was great work. I think
Yeah.
it covers, at least from my perspective, my concerns. The one thing that I did have, we talked about how openings will be advertised for 2 weeks via the city's, I guess what I'm looking for is, when do we, so if an appointment is up in January, when do we advertise that? Is it November? I mean, how far in advance do we start this process?
That's
You've
a
got
good-
4 weeks of review kind of scheduled in, so you'd
Right.
at least have to be 6 weeks out from the end of that.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
just.
It would be a couple months.
Do you have this where you can pull this up online? We put together kind of a graphic. I think you may have a copy of it, but we're going to pull it up online. I think that might help us. Let's walk through.
Okay.
And Christy, that's a great question, because one of the things that I'm looking at, it starts with the written notice of resignation or notice of term expiration to be submitted to the mayor. So if someone is having to resign their position, they would formally notify the mayor. Now, the question that you're asking is, if we know in advance that they would be leaving, what we would be working on is a 60-day prior to starting that process.
Okay.
And if you kind of look through this document, it takes a minimum of 60 days. It's about a 60-day process to have those appointments to the council to be determined, voted, and then back to the commissions. So we would need to start 60 days in advance.
So in that particular, in the case of a term expiration, we just start, if it's January, we back it up to November 1, October 30, somewhere in that time frame, and say, file for get, terms are up, notify the incumbents, and then notify at the same time everyone else that, it's time for application.
Correct.
Okay.
The only other, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
And the thinking would be that we would utilize the newsletter and all of our other forms of media to let the public know, and we wouldn't start that process 2 weeks before the appointment. We would start it early enough so that they would be aware of it if they wanted to call to get information on how that board functions, what their responsibilities would be, that we would have an opportunity to talk with them before they submit their application.
Apply.
Yes.
Okay.
That brings up another good point. Do we have, I hate to say job descriptions, because that's not what I mean, but do we have kind of job descriptions for these different boards? That somebody could go out, and if I said, okay, I'm interested in the electric utility board, this is the meeting expectations, this is kind of what that board's responsible for. Do we have that anywhere?
Okay. We have a document that we actually, and I'll have Doreen pass this to you, we were going to get to it, great question. We went out, and one of the websites that we saw that we thought was just great, best practices, a really nice course. It's Dallas, City of Dallas, so they have lots of resources. But if you go out and look on their website, under each of their boards or commissions, it will actually have a description of what they do and then what the requirements